So if you don't want to be filmed, please turn off your camera. This session is streamed live on YouTube. And if you have any questions during the sessions, just please write them down in the chat. You can see the logo at the bottom of your screen, and we'll be addressing them at the end of our speakers' presentations. Please turn off your microphones, put them on mute if you are not speaking. And I also want you to keep your best smile for the end because we will have a group photo. So today I will be your moderator of the webinar. My name is Sarah de Bush. I'm an Institutional Affairs Officer for SMART. SMART is a cooperative of freelancers that supports them in the development of their activities. We are active in 8 EU countries, and I am based in Brussels. It's a sunny and warm day. We haven't had that in a long time, so it's really great. So before getting into the content of our webinar, I would like to invite Tarun Bhargava from IFCO in India and our ICETT chair for a few welcome words, and then we'll follow welcome by ICA President Ariel Guarco. Tarun?
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much. And I'm so happy to be here today on 1st of June, 2021. And we have so many great cooperative leaders from across the globe. And the number one leader we have here is my dear friend, Dr. Ariel Guarco. He is such a wonderful cooperator, such a humble person, such a compassionate person. During times of COVID also, he made sure that all the cooperators across the globe interacted with each other. He had special meetings with all of us. So I first of all welcome my dear friend, the President of International Cooperative Alliance, Dr. Ariel Guarco. I also welcome the speakers today. We have Antino, we have we have Lisa, and we have Joe Holz. I welcome them also to this series of webinars ICETT is organizing. And before I start this, a small presentation what Joseph has made for all of us. And I'd like to also welcome all my other friends from different countries of the different continents of the globe joining here today. Thank you very much for the valuable time. So we have here a brief introduction of ICETT, if many people must not be knowing about it. It was an initiative which started in 2018 in Buenos Aires, Argentina, from Dr. Ariel Guarco's land. And we had a very brainstorming session there during the regional assembly there, a summit of cooperators in 2018. Where the cooperators from large cooperatives of the world joined, and they agreed we should have an entrepreneurship think tank, a body to take forward the cooperative movement in the next 5 years ahead. So we had some objectives that ICETT should be a strategic hub to strengthen the cooperatives' entrepreneurial performance, offer strategic thinking on cooperative entrepreneurship to demonstrate that cooperative business model can be the key differentiator. And as all of us know, in all countries, we find that cooperatives are the only institution these days, being the people's movement. We are able to reach the people, whether it is the farmers or the bankers or say the social activists or people like Sarah, who is the coordinator for today's event. She is representing a very unique cooperative in Brussels, SMART, which I had a chance to visit also. And she's very intelligent person I've met, and she is running this SMART cooperative excellently. So we have ICETT members. The group today consists of around 15 members from across the globe. We have Banco Credit Corp from Cooperativo from Argentina, Buldana from India, Cooperativa de Portuarios de Porto de San Martin from Argentina. We had Cooperativa Obrera from Argentina again. We have IFCO, Indian Farmers Fertilizer Cooperative, my cooperative from India. We have Kibbutz movement from Israel, and Mirav is representing this cooperative. We have Mid Counties Cooperative from UK, Mondragon from Spain. We have National Agriculture Cooperative Federation, NACF from Korea. And we have NCG, National Cooperative Grocers from US. We have Rabobank from Netherlands. We have S Group from Finland. We have Sankar Seguros from Argentina, Smart from Belgium, and Up Group from France. So it has been a continuous effort. We have been evolving over the last 3 years, and in 2020, we had a virtual meeting in which we decided to form a core group, which consisted of Mr. Joseph, Mr. Santosh, and Mr. Hunsik at the ICA Global Office, and being led by Mr. Bruno Rollins, who is the Director General of Alliance. And we had decided to have the 4 working groups. The first one, the future of work, which is led by Sarah De Huich from Smart Corp Belgium, today's events moderator also. We have a human rights and value chains led by Mariana Sarikoski from SOK Finland. She's a well-known cooperator and a very bright person to meet. Every time I meet her, she had some new ideas, and she is also on the board of International Cooperative Alliance. I have Mr. Peter Westall leading the World Cooperative Monitor and SDGs working group from Mid-Counties Cooperative United Kingdom. We have Cooperative Identity as a Cooperative Advantage as the 4th working group led by Inigo Albizuri from Mondragon Corporation, Spain. So these are the 4 main streams ICETT is working on presently. And we are working together with Eurixe from Italy, and we have Ilana here today in the webinar also. She has been very helpful and assisting all of us in taking this ICETT forward. Then we had some events in past, but now we decided to give a push. And the first of the events we have today is on the working group 1, which is the future of work. Then we'll be having the next event will be on June 3rd, and the third one on June 9, which will be on the environmentally just future and human rights and ethical value chains, focusing on new cooperatives tackling the child labor. So as we start today, I'd like to just tell all my friends who have joined this webinar today. We have today, I see 43 participants already on the screen. So we have a wonderful response today, and thanks to Joseph and Sarah who are taking this forward. So we are already having 43 people joining us. So welcome friends to this webinar today. And today's topic is the future of work. I cannot name all my friends here, but a big hello to all. And especially as we start this event, this is, I'll say this is a very special day for all of us, that we are putting the ICETT objectives across the globe and trying to reach all the big cooperatives, all the small cooperatives. As we say in cooperatives, there's one for all and all for one. So we want to unite everyone. And as all of us are passing through very tough times of COVID-19, it's a rare opportunity to join on the virtual platform. And we have decided the 2 main streams in the next few months to take the rebuilding the economy during after the COVID times or during the COVID times, And also the climate change, which are the hot topics, and cooperatives must really focus on these topics as these affect all the communities across the globe. I take this moment to welcome the speakers, Antonio Casilli from Telecom Paris of Institut Polytechnique de Paris, and researcher at Interdisciplinary Institute on Innovation and Institute of French CNRS, Lisa Herzog, Center for Philosophy, Politics, and Economics at University of Groningen, Joe Holtz, representative of Park Slope Food Cooperative, Supermarket Cooperative, Prosumer Approach. So let's give a big hand to all three of them because they are the special people we have today. And now let's give a big hand to all of them. Let's put our mics on, So let's have a feeling that we are not on a virtual, we are just meeting each other live. And now I move on to welcome my dear friend, a very well-renowned cooperator, and he has won the hearts of many people across the globe, Dr. Ariel Guarco from Argentina. He is also the president of Cooperar. He is also the president of FEDECOBA. And I remember my stint with ICA, International Cooperative Alliance. It started with Argentina when I first attended the board meeting of International Cooperative Alliance in Buenos Aires. And that was the first time I met Dr. Ariel Guarco. And I found him to be a fantastic cooperator all across these past years. I've been working with ICA and the cooperatives across the globe. And he was the man who helped us in building this ICETT International Cooperative Entrepreneurship Think Tank group, which is now 15 members. And every new quarter, we are trying to add more members to ICA wing of ICETT. So recently, NACF has joined us from Korea, and we had the one from US also. They have recently joined the ICETT group. So I welcome, and over to you, Dr. Ariel. The floor is all yours.
Muy bien, muy buenos días aquí en Argentina, en América. Muy buenas tardes, muy buenas noches para ustedes. Depende del lugar del planeta en el que se encuentren. Realmente es un placer para mí estar hoy aquí. Quiero saludar muy especialmente a Tarun Bhargava, presidente del Think Tank cooperativo, y agradecerle por todo el trabajo que está haciendo, por esta responsabilidad que ha asumido con tanto compromiso y que ha dado estos frutos tan importantes en estos 2 años, casi 3 de trabajo. Quiero saludar a todos los panelistas que van a disertar hoy. Quiero saludar a todos mis amigos que están participando del ICETT y a todos y a todas los cooperativistas que están hoy en este webinar. Es para mí un verdadero honor estar en la apertura de este ciclo de conferencias que han organizado de una manera tan pertinente. Sin dudas estamos atravesando momentos de grandes desafíos a escala global. En medio de la incertidumbre y las pérdidas humanas, en primer lugar, pero también económicas y de sociabilidad que genera la pandemia, realmente celebro que mantengamos este tipo de intercambios, aunando propuestas y afrontando juntos los desafíos que hoy tenemos por delante. Estoy convencido de que el modelo cooperativo es el que debe proponer y guiar hacia una salida de la crisis actual. Para un desarrollo verdaderamente sostenible, donde la acción por el clima y el trabajo decente, entre otros objetivos, puedan ser cumplidos por la cooperativa, es clave el trabajo que están realizando ustedes. El próximo sábado 3 de julio vamos a conmemorar nuestro Día Internacional de las Cooperativas, con la consigna Reconstruir mejor juntos. Y por eso proponemos a cada uno de nuestros miembros que participe de la invitación a mostrar de qué está hecha nuestra identidad cooperativa. Actividades como esta que ustedes están realizando y que culminarán con el próximo Congreso Mundial de la ACI son un ejemplo de ello. Por eso yo agradezco sinceramente su iniciativa y celebro su participación, en la medida que nos ayuda a poner en valor la enorme tarea que en este contexto vienen realizando las cooperativas. En todos los rubros, a lo largo y a lo ancho del planeta, nuestras empresas están demostrando su resiliencia y su gran compromiso con las comunidades donde están insertas. Como lo hacen desde hace muchas décadas, pero sobre todo en momentos difíciles, las cooperativas ponen sus valores y principios en acción para dar respuesta a las necesidades más apremiantes de sus asociados y de toda la comunidad. No hace falta que yo les cuente cómo están afrontando los desafíos que se presentan en cada uno de sus propios territorios, pero sí quiero destacar hoy de qué forma el modelo cooperativo está demostrando una vez más su capacidad para sostener el tejido económico y social de aquellos lugares donde se desenvuelve. Dicho esto, me parece sobresaliente que podamos encarar temas estratégicos como los que se proponen debatir en este ciclo. Es momento de reafirmar nuestro compromiso con un futuro del trabajo centrado en las personas, tal como lo hemos estipulado junto con la Organización Internacional del Trabajo, con la cual compartimos agenda y objetivos comunes. Es momento de reafirmar nuestro compromiso en la formación de cadenas éticas globales que ayuden a eliminar el trabajo infantil en todas sus formas, de aquí hasta hacia el año 2025, como lo establece la Agenda de Desarrollo Sostenible. Y es momento de reafirmar nuestro compromiso con la defensa del planeta, impulsando acciones que contribuyan a reducir la huella de carbono y a reducir las emisiones de gases de efecto invernadero significativamente. En todos estos ámbitos tenemos experiencias para compartir y para mostrar como ejemplo de que es posible gestionar empresas que fomenten el crecimiento económico sin dejar a nadie atrás. Sabemos que el futuro del trabajo y la defensa del planeta dependen de cómo los distintos actores económicos, sociales y políticos construyamos un paradigma justo, solidario y democrático a nivel global. Antes de la pandemia, ya veníamos con cambios muy vertiginosos en los modos de producción y consumo. Cambios que llevan la impronta de las nuevas tecnologías y que ayudan a incrementar como nunca antes la productividad de las empresas y el acceso a consumo de distintos bienes y servicios. Pero estas transformaciones pueden darse con las personas y el medio ambiente en el centro de la escena, o, como ocurrió muchas veces en la historia, pueden acentuar la degradación del ambiente y llevar a procesos de concentración que excluyen a millones de personas. Ustedes han escogido sabiamente temáticas clave para avanzar en esta reconstrucción justa que las cooperativas estamos proponiendo. Para la Alianza Cooperativa Internacional es un gran orgullo contar con un think tank de estas características. El gran valor de las empresas que lo conforman no solo reside simplemente en su volumen de facturación, sino en la centralidad que le dan a las personas, tanto a las que trabajan en ellas como a las que sirven día a día. Esto es fundamental para animar el surgimiento de nuevas cooperativas, para ayudar a crecer a las más pequeñas y para profundizar la integración de nuestra red global, una red global con más de 3 millones de cooperativas y más de 1.000 millones de miembros asociados. Su trabajo como grandes empresas cooperativas es también central para dar ejemplo en los distintos mercados donde sus empresas se desenvuelven, demostrando su capacidad de ser al mismo tiempo eficientes económicamente y responsables socialmente. Ustedes son baluarte para mejorar la incidencia en cada país y a nivel internacional en la búsqueda de marcos normativos, políticos e institucionales que favorezcan el desarrollo cooperativo. Estoy seguro que durante estas jornadas van a poder consolidar la tarea que vienen realizando en los distintos grupos de trabajo y van a profundizar el camino que están siguiendo desde el 2018, cuando dimos nacimiento al ICETT. Y estoy absolutamente convencido de que junto con el resto de los líderes, investigadores, funcionarios y participantes en general, podrán elaborar conclusiones que nos ayuden a seguir profundizando en nuestra identidad. Está en nuestras manos demostrar que se puede hacer economía con valores y principios, con arraigo en los territorios y con el bien común como horizonte. Mostremos cómo estamos afrontando la crisis provocada por la pandemia, con solidaridad y resiliencia, ofreciendo a las comunidades una recuperación centrada en las personas y respetuosa del medio ambiente. Podemos ser protagonistas de un desarrollo verdaderamente sostenible, un desarrollo que haga de este un mundo mejor, con más oportunidades para todos y que garantice una vida digna para las próximas generaciones. Yo celebro nuevamente esta iniciativa, les agradezco que me hayan invitado a compartir estos minutos con ustedes y les deseo mucho éxito en estas 3 jornadas. Muchísimas gracias.
Gracias, Ariel. So, in the frame of the ICETT, it's my honor to be the coordinator of this working group on the future of work. And this working group is composed of representatives of different cooperative groups, such as Mondragon Group, Group Up, Kibbutz Movement, and yes, National Grocers Co-op. The idea of this working group is to identify the trends that are impacting the world of work, identify emerging needs and challenges linked to these trends and that are forging the future of work. And of course, to underline the existing and plausible roles of the cooperatives in this regard. Another ambition, which is for a bit after this first stage, is also linked to the topics of existing indicators to measure cooperatives' contribution to the Sustainable Development Goals, and especially the number 8 on decent work. And also to propose new indicators to show cooperatives' innovative contribution to the future of work, but also to the SDGs. So how did we proceed? I'll be very brief so that we can have our speakers speak more. But basically, we brought input and discussions from members of the ICETT working group, and also the broader ICETT group. And we elaborated a preliminary baseline report on cooperatives and the future of work. And many thanks to Hunsik for his work on this. It was a great support. And in this baseline report that we want to challenge and complete also through these experts' contribution, we've analyzed megatrends, and on the many megatrends that really influence the future of work, we are and in which cooperatives would have to answer, we believe. We focused on 4 main trends, which are social evolutions, which are of course links to labor market, but also the impact of the COVID crisis, for example, as it was mentioned, the environmental challenges, of course, technology and digitization, and also social dialogue. And we've also analyzed 5 issues that the cooperatives can take up for a more sustainable world of work. And basically, these are that co-ops can directly address new concepts of work, as well as all the new challenges of the labor market that are just re-emerging with more pressure than ever. And co-ops can also create protections and new solidarities for these new forms of work. Some are called new, but they're actually quite old, but let's stay with this denomination. Technology, co-ops can use them to improve their business models, of course, it was mentioned, but also they can address the challenges created by purely capitalistic platforms. And as regarding to sustainable economy, co-ops can play a major and proactive role in the transition while leaving no one behind, which is crucial. And the last aspect that we've identified is the social services. They are a potential area for the cooperative work. We also, in our baseline report, we also identified 4 cooperative specific factors to answer these challenges. And we believe that the fact that co-ops are community-based activities, that they are pragmatic answers, that they often provide innovative solutions to complex issues, that they mutualize resources, and that they are keen on cooperating with broader stakeholders and even social partners are aspects that we have to take into consideration in our work and our themes. So the aim of this webinar, as I mentioned, is to challenge and to provide input to this preliminary baseline reports by questioning the very notion of what work is. So to do so, we invited these panelists, and they will share their knowledge from very different perspectives. And so why should we question the notion of work? Well, because I mentioned technological evolution, global challenges, and individual aspirations require rethinking our solidarities. And we don't want to wipe out what has been built up until now, and especially in the last century and in the frame of the second industrial revolution. Rather, to consolidate these, we believe that we also have to find adapted and efficient solutions to the new realities of the labor market and from the challenges of the 21st century, and what some call the fourth industrial revolution. And why I reflect upon this in the frame of the cooperative movement and even in ICETT? Well, there are 2 main reasons. First of all, the cooperatives have always been on the forefront of new solidarities. It is where solidarities are being invented at grassroots levels, experimented, and sometimes even paved the way for broader solidarities like those organized at a state level. And because cooperatives propose alternative solutions that put at the heart of their function human before capital. And that is exactly what we need more than ever to fight against the negative effects of extractive economy. So to address these issues, we have 3 experts. They have been presented already. We are going to start with Antonio Casilli, just to make sure if you have any questions, we're going to have leave at least half an hour for question and answers. So keep them. You can write them in the chat so that we can collect them, and we'll keep them for after the 3 presentations. So as I mentioned, we're going to start with Antonio Casilli. He's full professor of sociology at the School of Telecommunications, Télécom Paris, of the Polytechnic Institute of Paris. Since 2007, he has been facilitating a seminar studying digital cultures at the School of Higher Studies in Social Sciences of Paris, where he is an associate researcher, and he is one of the founders of ENDL, so the European Network on Digital Labors. He has written many fascinating books. I'm reading right now, Waiting for Robots, and I really, it's a great book that I recommend highly to everybody. There are many others that he's been working on, and lately I've also had the opportunity to participate in a research consortium with Antonio on the topic of slash workers. But if we've invited Antonio today, it is to give a perspective on how digital technologies impact work and labor. And he will be providing us with a socio-historical approach to the notion of automated work and platform and much more. Well, Antonio, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Oh, I hear a bit of a reverberation, but anyway, okay, it is gone. Thank you very much, Sarah. Thank you, Tarun and Ariel, for the introduction and for the invitation. As Sarah was saying, I'm a sociologist. Everybody has his cross to bear, and I especially study the impact of technologies on work, but also the work that is necessary to produce technologies. I have been working for several years with several cooperatives, and especially in the frame of the ongoing movement of platform cooperativism. And of course, I have also been working just to address another of the trends mentioned by Sarah with several unions. So the actual research consortium that we worked together on with Sarah was actually about industrial relations and the importance of conventional and new forms of organization of work, but also of representation of the needs, grievances, and of course the working conditions of people. We were focusing on Europe, but you will see that probably we we do have some results, or at least some perspectives that might be leverageable even in other countries and in other continents. While addressing the topic of the future of work, one always has to take into account the fact that the very notion, the very expression future of work is extremely heavy in terms of ideological burden and the implications that might go actually either way. Of course, future of work might imply that we are looking at the possible utopian developments, but also political perspective, progressive political perspectives that we may implement all over the world. But also on the other side, you are all aware of the fact that the future of work has been appropriated as an expression and as a label even by several representatives of market forces or capitalist organizations. And of course, all over the world, in many cases, it has become synonymous with full automation and technological disruption of some social balances, some political conquests that we reached in the previous centuries, and in several cases also with some adverse effects on our societies, communities, and in general also on the environmental resources of our planet. This is all the more visible since the beginning of the current pandemic crisis, because in a way the COVID crisis and the economic crisis that is associated to the pandemic has accelerated some of the trends that were already developing in the before world, one might say. One of these is, of course, the tendency towards using automation as a silver bullet or a quick solution to. I'm sorry, there is a bit of. Okay, sorry, I was saying using technology and automation as a silver bullet to address our ongoing problems, or presented as a way of developing or promising at least economic growth and possibly also social change. There is also a risk that is associated more directly with the use of technologies and especially of digital platforms since the beginning of the pandemic. The fact that there is a shift of the burden either in terms of health and in terms of economic risk, a shift of this burden on workers and on citizens. By this, I mean that if we look at the current digital platform ecosystem, it has become clear that we are facing a situation where an increasing number of persons who have lost their job, who are looking for other income sources or for some kind of stability, and in many cases, especially when it comes to remote work, working from home, also to mitigating the risk of contracting coronavirus, and so also limiting human contact with clients, customers, and so on and so on. So in this situation, platforms have presented themselves as the perfect solution. Also, platforms are associated with large endeavors of data collection that is used, this data, to train and to calibrate AI solutions. So in a way, the current development of digital platforms all over the world, from Asia to South America to, of course, the US and Europe, has been also associated with a push towards even more automation. If we look at the scholarship, or one might say the academic discourse surrounding automation, of course, the COVID has provided a forum for several academics, especially those who are interested in pushing their own prophecies of full automation, to insist on or maintain some of the claims that they made before the arrival of the pandemic. One of the persons that I have in mind is an economist from Oxford, Michael Benedict, who with his colleague Osborne produced back in 2013 a famous study about the future of employment. The title was just that, Future of Employment, the Future of Employment. And in this, they maintained that by 2030, 47% of the jobs in countries like the US would be lost to automation. Of course, this study has been criticized. The results have been called into question by several other academics. Nevertheless, since the arrival of the COVID-19, these results, and especially those who produce, the academics who produce, are back on the market for ideas and are insisting that, yeah, probably it didn't happen, but now it will happen. We will have full automation for the good reason that basically we need full automation. Well, companies need full automation to actually even preserve or respect the health of their workers. Of course, full automation is also associated with the risk of job displacement. The fact that jobs would be lost or will be lost to automation. In my opinion, there is another problem. There is that one might describe as the transformation of work into human as a service. I'm not the inventor of this expression. It's a colleague of mine, also an Oxford professor, Jeremiah Sprassel. Some of you might know him. He published a book in 2018 called Humans as a Service that basically described this extreme commodification of human labor that is achieved via digital platforms, where basically many of the conquests of our society, and especially labor society, have been called into question. A company can go on a platform such as Amazon Mechanical Turk or Upwork and simply buy labor, or in a way purchase a few minutes or a few hours or a few days of a worker's time. And then when the project or the task or the gig is done, well, simply well, not fire, because it was not the workers were not hired in the first place, but simply dispose this labor force. In a way, I consider this to be one of the main risks that we are facing, and probably COVID has exaggerated this risk. The risk of turning the commodification of labor that was a clear and present danger since the 20th century, and institutions such as ILO have been extremely effective in raising awareness about it, turning commodification of work into something new, something even more insidious and probably even more dangerous, that might be described as the servicialization of labor. You probably will forget me this strange and hybrid word, but basically this means that turning labor into humans as a service. And of course, this is associated with long trends in the history of automation. Automation is not a new thing, let's be clear, despite the fact that every time a new app or a new, I don't know, vocal assistant or AI is produced, it is presented as something new, as the future, and probably something impacting the future of work. Automation, especially the application of automation to work, is a century-long, several centuries long historical trend. If we look at examples of efforts to automate productive tasks and simply fire workers, we can go back to the 17th century, where we have the first examples of machines applied in industrial settings. So even before the actual industrial revolution. We had inventors and governments and companies that wanted to create workshops and then factories without workers. So this is nothing new. What is new is that this is associated with the specific forms, in my opinion, that is the platform form, meaning a new paradigm. There is both a political and an economic and a technological paradigm. So by this, I mean that today's automation is produced by platform, is manifested and sold by platforms, and platforms are, again, they are not new either. Like automation, we have the notion of platform is a very old one, not only because etymologically it is an architectural notion. It means, an architectural structure, but it is a political notion, the notion of platform, that has been used for several centuries to describe a political program. Think about the use of the notion of platform even today, in today's English, when we talk about the platform of a party. Yes, it is a political and a politically oriented notion, and we have to take this into account when we look at the way platforms are used, are presented, and are, that they may also represent a possible way out, a possible exit strategy from present day risks, dangers, and challenges that weigh over the labor civilization, our labor civilization. What I have in mind is, of course, the existence of an ever-growing movement of platform cooperativism that, in my opinion, is an interesting phenomenon. I will tell you that I am close but critical to this movement. I am close because I'm working with them in some cases, or having the pleasure and the honor of participating to several events or consortium or initiatives organized by platform cooperatives. But in my opinion, there are three challenges that today we have to take into account when we look at the application of the platform framework to cooperatives. The first one is, of course, the risk of turning a perfectly functional cooperative into a dysfunctional and less effective startup. Let's be fair, this is something that has been going on for several years now. We have conventional cooperatives that want to undergo their own digital transformation, and they decide to go platform, or to develop something that has to do with algorithmic matching, data collection, and of course, leveraging of more or less autonomous or self-employed labor. This is complicated, this is problematic, both from an economic point of view, from a legal point of view, and we don't even know if it's a bet that we want to do in a way. What I'm probably suggesting, and I'm heading towards the end of my short presentation, is that probably in platform cooperativism there are two tendencies, two trends that are in a way conflicting, and probably also talking at cross purpose in a sense. On the one side, as I mentioned, there are some cooperatives that want to go digital. On the other side, there are some digital platforms that want to go cooperative. If we are successful in finding a middle ground where these two trends can come together and work together and cross-pollinate in a way, or teach valuable lessons from their own respective history, platform cooperativism can be a durable and sustainable model. Yet there is another challenge. The second one, in my opinion, is the challenge of scalability. When compared to market platforms when compared to capitalist platforms, basically, cooperative platforms seem to be less good and less successful at being agile and scalable. If tomorrow, in a way, your cooperative platform goes from, I don't know, 500 users to 70 million users, like it might happen, for instance, if you have a commercial app or a commercial platform, what do? Are you ready to cut the corners from the legal point of view, from the labor point of view, from the economic point of view, to, I don't know, hire and then fire probably in 2 days new members of your platform? I don't think so. I don't think that this is in the DNA of cooperatives. So probably this is a major challenge. Are cooperatives good at, scale up or being scalable in general? And the final challenge, in my opinion, is environmental in nature. The technologies that are necessary to produce today's platform ecosystems are extremely taxing on our natural resources. I will give you one example among many, many others it is an example that is necessary to point one important fact, that the fact that despite digital technologies present themselves as, immaterial and ethereal and, eco-friendly, because it's just data, it's just information, there is a solid, a sound material background that is necessary, for instance, to produce our equipments and the batteries that go into those, and so on and so on. If we do not take into account the fact that whenever we are creating a platform, meaning a structure made of information, we need to take into account of the working conditions of those who produce the devices where this information will circulate. So we probably have to create other platforms in, I don't know, for instance, in China, in Shenzhen, where, iPhones or smartphones are assembled. And then we also have to look at cooperatives or more equitable and in general more humane organizations in countries like, Bolivia or Argentina, where lithium is produced and extracted to produce the batteries that go into these very same devices. If we do not take into account the necessary respect of humane working conditions at every step of this process, on every link of this supply chain, we will have a blind spot, or probably many, many blind spots. And we will have a challenge that might eventually doom the entire process of creation of structures such as our platform cooperatives. I think that is it. I have exhausted all the time that I had at my disposal, and so I gladly yield the floor to my colleague, Lisa Herzog.
That was perfect timing. Thank you, Antonio. Well, now we are going to leave the floor to Lisa Herzog. So please keep all your questions. Don't hesitate to put them on the chat, or Antonio will be addressing them at the end. We should have at least 20 minutes, maybe half an hour to address all the questions. So Lisa Herzog, she is professor of political philosophy at the Center for Philosophy, Politics, and Economics at the University of Groningen in the Netherlands. She works at the intersection of political philosophy and economic thought. She holds a master's degree in economics from the LMU in Munich, and a Master of Studies in Philosophy and a Doctor in Philosophy in Political Theory from University of Oxford. She has worked and visited many universities such as Galen in Switzerland, Leuven in Stanford in the US, and more. She was a Rhodes Scholar from 2007 to 2011, and in 2019 she received a Tractatus Preis and the German Award for Philosophy and Social Ethics. So she has published on philosophical dimensions of markets, both historically and systematically, liberalism and social justice, ethics in organizations, and the future of work. So the current focus of her work is on workplace democracy, professional ethics, and the role of knowledge in democracies. She has written many books, of which Reclaiming the System, Moral Responsibility, Divided Labor and the Role of Organizations in Society from Oxford in 2018. She also contributed, and that's how I came to know her, she is also a co-author of the Work Manifesto, where many co-authors, many women, such as Isabel Ferreras, Dominique Méda, or Julie Batilana have worked together on this Work Manifesto, which is about democratizing, decommodifying and decarbonizing work. Sorry, I've read the book in French, so it's difficult for me in English. So we've invited Lisa to talk to us about her work. She will be talking about the digital future of work, and she will be questioning the potentials for democratization. She will discuss 3 theses on this topic, and I will, with no further ado, Lisa, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for this warm welcome, and thank you for having me here. I'll try to share my screen. Let me see if that works. Can you see my slides?
Yes, we can.
Yes, thank you very much. So, as Sarah said, I'm a philosopher, so I'm coming to this from a maybe rather abstract angle, but I do believe in the power of ideas when it comes to how we organize our economic system. And today I'm going to reflect on some aspects of the future of work and digitalization and how they might be put into the service of democratizing the economy further. So when one hears and follows the public debate about the future of work, it's often rather polarized. And Antonio already mentioned some of the predictions. Some are techno-utopias and some are techno-dystopias. And sometimes it depends on what perspective you're taking on it and what role you're supposed to play in these future scenarios. So on the one hand, you have those people who say that it will be paradise on earth. We will be able to outsource all routine tasks, dangerous physical tasks, and so on to the robots. We can massively reduce working hours and so on. And on the other hand, you have those who think that this is like a Tyrannosaurus Rex coming into our economic systems and destroying whatever protection for workers has ever existed and really undermining not even economic structures, but also our democracies. Just think about all the debates about Facebook and Twitter and what this has done to political discourse. So big questions. But what I always find a bit frustrating is that it's so much polarized into these extremes without emphasizing that these are questions for human beings to take action and to actually design these futures. And I'm not saying this is easy or that any one of us as an individual can simply decide how to design these futures. But as past periods of innovation have shown, it's never technology alone that determines where these development goes. It's technology embedded in social and economic structures and ultimately political structures. So my first thesis here is that I'm in the camp of those who think it's not so different this time. There are some who think that the digital transformation is really a technological transformation that is completely different from all the technological transformations that have happened in the past. I don't think there's good evidence for this. And if one starts to look a bit into what artificial intelligence can and cannot do, where it stands at the moment, all the hypes that have already been there in the past, I think there are good reasons to think that, yes, it will change things, but it's an ongoing process, this technological transformation. It takes different forms in different parts of society, and we are right in the middle of it. I mean, we are doing this here on Zoom, calling from many countries worldwide. And sometimes I think we're a little bit like these frogs in the pot of water that I don't realize that the temperature is going up. I mean, this is a negative metaphor because the frogs get cooked. But I think there's also something positive in the sense that we are all the time learning, adapting to new technologies. Think about how kids take up new stuff. And it's not only black, there's also a lot of white stuff in the sense that we are learning new things and we are learning how to deal with them. But, and in principle, if you look at what technology, and especially artificial intelligence, algorithms, robots, is good at and what human beings are good at, there is actually huge potential to improve working conditions because they are intelligent in different ways. Human intelligence and artificial intelligence are really not the same thing. And some philosophers have argued we shouldn't actually call it artificial intelligence. This is quite misleading. It's something else. It's very much a way of continuing patterns that have held in the past. And it's wonderful if we know exactly what the tasks are, what needs to be done. If we have routine tasks, then we have usually also large data sets, and robots and algorithms can do a lot of work that would actually be tedious and boring for human beings. And so ideally, what you would like to see is a division of labor between machines and human beings, where human beings can focus on what they are good at, which often has to do with social relations, with creativity, with having new ideas and so on, whereas machines can take on more of the routine tasks that are also some of the negative aspects of work. But whether or not the development goes in that direction is going to depend on how these technologies are being used, also which forms of research are being funded, and that is very much a question of political power in the end. And as always, in periods of technological transformation or any kind of transformation, questions of power that may have been in the background in other times when there wasn't so much change really come to the fore. And you really see, okay, who can call the shots on certain decisions, who decides what kind of research gets funded, who decides what direction these developments take. And that's one of the reasons for why I think it's so important to have this conversation about the future of work, because if the workers and those who are on the side of workers don't ask these questions, the questions will be answered by others, and it will not be in a way that will be useful and beneficial for workers. So it's very important to make this an issue. Now, when one then ask this question, well, where is this all supposed to lead us? Some people say, and that leads me to my second thesis, that we are facing the end of work. Something like widespread unemployment. Antonia quoted these figures that have been floating around, about 42% of all jobs being at risk and so on. And some people have actually embraced this, saying, okay, let's talk about a post-work world. Let's try to get rid of the kinds of wage relations that we've seen in the past. And let's maybe install something like an unconditional basic income in order to allow people to step out of work. But I think this is a misguided idea, not only because I don't think it's feasible. I think we will have need for human activities in the future, but also because it overlooks the positive potential that work can also have and the way in which it can contribute to human flourishing if it is good work. What I would concede to these people who call for an end of work or predict an end of work is that the model of 9 to 5 jobs for one wage earner per family, like the sort of 1950s model of the US or the UK or so, that may be dead. But that doesn't have to be a bad thing. That all depends on how the benefits and burdens of other work models are being distributed. And more flexible timing can actually be a great thing. It just depends on whether workers or employers decide how this flexible time has to be used. I also think that it may be worthwhile thinking about reductions of working hours. So as I said, I assume that societies will continue to need many human activities, but maybe in the future, part of the struggles might be for the gains in time to be shared with workers. But what matters is really that instead of hoping for some end of work or some post-work period, we should think about how to design for good work and just working conditions in this digital transformation. And of course, that countries start from very different places when one talks about this. So it's very hard to say things in general there. But I think there are some principles or general arguments that one can make here. And this is one of the contributions that I think philosophy can make here, to actually think about, okay, what does it mean to talk about good work? And it's quite clear that good work means the absence of certain negative factors. So you don't want workers to be physically or psychologically harmed. You want worker safety regulation to be in place and so on. But I think there is more to it. There are really positive goods of work. And together with a colleague, Anka Gausch, we sat down a while ago and looked at a large bunch of literature from sociology, history, philosophy, and so on, to try to distill what it is that people can gain from good work. And we've come up with 4 categories which can serve as a kind of normative framework for thinking about what good work can mean in different contexts. One is the possibility of developing one's skills, doing something where one feels that one can grow as an individual. A second aspect is to experience sociability and positive forms of sociability. For many workers, the colleagues are really like a second family. I mean, you have to spend so many hours with them. If the social relations at work are bad, that can have such a negative effect on people's lives. If you have mobbing, or you're being micromanaged all day long, or you're being discriminated at work, that can cut really deep, because the rest of your life might then really be dominated by these negative experiences during working hours. So this is one of the key questions: is do I look forward to the social structures at work or not? Then there is also the point of experiencing meaning, seeing that one makes a positive contribution to society. You probably saw the debate about bullshit jobs that David Graeber had started a couple of years ago, where he said some people would argue that their own job is actually completely pointless and the world would be a better place if they didn't do this job. And I mean, one can argue a little bit about how exactly he has understood this notion of bullshit jobs, but it seems clear that this is not what we want for the future of work. We want people to be able to really realize something that they can consider meaningful. And then last but not least, and this often overlaps, but not always, you also want people to be able to receive social recognition for their work. And that raises all kinds of questions about which work is seen as respectable and is higher up in the social hierarchy. This is tied to all kinds of other social hierarchies. I mean, in many countries, work done by men has traditionally received more recognition than work done by women. And that still shows today in wage differentials and differentials in social standing. But even if we try to sort of abstract from these distorting social influences, the social recognition that individuals receive through work is very important for a notion of good work. And then, of course, in addition to these factors, we can also ask about just working conditions. And I'm not going to say too much here, because you're probably all familiar with the various discussions about decent work and fair wages and so on. There are issues of wage justice, of equality of opportunity. And then to add one that has become more relevant with the corona crisis and the possibility of distant working, temporal justice. So who decides about how people spend their time? How much do they have to work in total? Can they decide themselves when to work and when not to work? What right to disconnect from work do they have? So these questions of who decides how people can use their time, I think those will become more important in the future because of digital technologies and the flexibility that they can allow. Now, my third thesis here is that if we see the digital transformation as an opportunity, but also a challenge for designing for better work in the future, then I think a key issue is to not just think about abstract notions of good work, but to give those who do the actual work the voice to discuss with their colleagues and their bosses and everyone in their companies what it actually means to have good work in their concrete situation. So I think democratization is really a key issue for managing this digital transformation in a way that does not come at the cost of workers. And that, of course, is not how it's often happening, although Antonio already talked about the platform cooperative movement and these attempts to bring digitalization and cooperatives together. When one looks at this debate about work in philosophy, and in academic philosophy, there has been a huge revival of this topic in recent years. It's quite interesting to see what the structure of this debate actually is, because it seems that when you look at values and principles, everyone is in favor of democratic work in the form of cooperatives or in the form of co-determination, or can take different forms. But it seems clear that when you talk about justice, about dignity, democracy, autonomy, all these values pull in the direction of democratic work. The counter arguments, which usually come from economists, are questions about feasibility. And I'm often quite shocked, especially when I talk with economists in the Anglophone world, about how little they actually know about the existence of co-determination, cooperatives, and all kinds of non-standard forms of work that are feasible and that are efficient. I think there's a lot of work to do to actually get the word into the mainstream about these possibilities. But if one takes this to be the structure of the debate, so the values pull towards democratic work, and there are these question marks about feasibility, then it suggests itself to ask, can digital tools be used to help address feasibility issues? For example, by reducing the transaction cost for democratic decision-making. And again, this is not how the digital transformation in companies is usually discussed. But I think what one sometimes sees is a sort of irony that companies introduce digital tools to make work more efficient, but employees actually learn that they can also use these tools to organize bottom up. And then often you run into power questions. Are they actually allowed to use, for example, the internal chat platforms for discussing also other issues? But when you think about all these concepts like holacracy, agile work, all this new work fashion that has arrived, at least in the US and in many parts of Europe, a lot of it has a rhetoric of empowerment, enabling people to use all these tools and so on. And it doesn't make this last step of people actually also giving power and really democratizing. But if one could bring the unions and the cooperatives and those who fight for real power sharing at work together with those who think about and develop these technologies, I think this is a very interesting potential alliance that could help to really think about democratic potentials of these new digital tools. I once discovered a quote, which I then tracked down, and John Dewey, the American pragmatist philosophers, has actually attributed it to Carlyle, and it's not really wrong, so it's sort of a made-up quote. And it goes as follows. It says, invent the printing press and democracy is inevitable. And when I read this, I was sort of immediately thinking, okay, maybe there's an analogy here today. Invent the internet and democratic work is inevitable. Because what this first quote implies is that if you have the means of communication to empower people to really think about things, to get informed and to participate in public discussions, then in the long run, you cannot deny them the right to vote and to participate in politics. And with all the communicative possibilities of digital communication, we really wonder whether in the long run, you can keep people out from having a voice and participating in the structures in which they do their work. But of course, between the printing press and the arrival of democracy, which is still not fully developed in many countries and not perfect anywhere, there were centuries and there were so many political struggles. And that means there are other political means and measures that are needed. But I think what's important is that we are aware of the possibility of digital work actually becoming better and becoming democratic and realizing the values that it's supposed to realize. And to conclude, I'll just briefly mention the manifesto that Sarah already mentioned, which it was sort of a spontaneous thing. Some people had written this text, and then we got together, contacted friends, colleagues, and in the end, about 3,000 people signed it last May. And by now, it's even more. It's about 6,000 now, about these 3 principles for the future of work. Democratize, I mean, this is what I mostly talked about here, but also decommodify, and I can say more about that if you're interested in the Q&A later, and decarbonize, so the relation to climate change and the environmental threats. And what became clear to us in the discussions that we had about this text and then the book that came out of it and all these things is that it's really so important to think about these 3 principles in an integrated way, and they can mutually reinforce each other if it goes well. And on the other hand, if you have none of these things, there can also be a sort of negative self-reinforcing spiral that leads to a very dystopian vision. And just to conclude, let me point out that in October, we'll hold a big conference, hopefully big. We're calling it the Global Forum on Democratizing Work. And in a way, we're really doing PR for the cooperative movement, but also for other forms of democratizing work. And everyone is invited to participate, also suggest events there. We're going to organize it partly centralized and a lot of it decentralized. So if you have any questions about that, I'm also happy to talk about this. And the reason for why we think this is important is that we are in this key moment after the Corona crisis. Everyone is wondering, are we going to go back to the old normal, or can there be a new normal? And what would it be like? And how could we deal with the underlying climate crisis? And maybe for you in the cooperative movement, I don't know to what extent you're aware how little many ordinary people know about the very existence of cooperatives, at least in the countries where I'm active. And as I said earlier, when I talk to economists, the way mainstream economists trains young people is still sort of implying, I know cooperatives cannot work, cannot function, co-determination doesn't work. So I think there is a lot of work to be done to really get the word out on these things, which can then also help to hopefully shape the political landscape in ways that make it friendlier for cooperatives to grow and to maybe at some point crowd out other forms of organizing work and to really make democratic work inevitable. Thank you very much, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much, Lisa. So now we will end with a fellow cooperator, Joe Holtz. If we've invited him today, it's because he is general manager of the Park Slope Food Co-op in Brooklyn. It's, in my view, an innovative cooperative supermarket model that has inspired many initiatives on both sides of the Atlantic Ocean, maybe more, I don't know. I know about La Louve in Paris or Biscope in Brussels, and I've heard of a new initiatives in Berlin. So this model has really inspired many, and it really answers to many questions that we've been talking about regarding how we produce. But I think also the way it functions, but Joe will tell us a bit more about that, it really questions what we consider as work or not. And I think it's really an interesting example also of democratizing work and decarbonizing it also. And as I said, it really, for me, it tackles a question of what is work? Is it because it's paid, or is it because you're producing value? I think this is a question we should also put into the balance of this conversation today. So just a few words about Joseph. He was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. In '73, Joe and 10 other Brooklynites co-founded the Park Slope Food Co-op. He has been actively involved in the cooperative ever since. Since '75, he was the first paid staff of the co-op as a general coordinator, and since the mid-90s, he is the general manager. Joe, the floor is yours. Please tell us more.
Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with cooperators from around the world. And thank you for inviting me very much. Our co-op, I think it's important to put it in some historical context. When it started in the mid to late 60s and into the early 70s, probably thousands of food cooperatives were started in the United States, mostly young people in my generation who were very disenchanted with the way things were working in our country and in the world. We were very much inspired by the civil rights movement, by the women's rights movement, by the environmental movement, the gay rights movement. All these movements were coming together, and in particular also the anti-Vietnam movement, anti-imperialist movement. All these things were coming together. And so most people who started cooperatives in the United States, when food cooperatives, when we realized that there was a way of doing something that was for the collective good instead of following the standard ethical, following the standard way of Americans were expected to act, which was to be me, instead of was we. And we felt very strongly about that. And so there was a slogan then, food for people, not for profit. Back then, it was a very popular slogan. And so the people who started the Park So Food Co-op, we really believed that cooperation means working together. Now, as I got older and wiser, I realized that you can't always work together. Sometimes you can only invest together. And of course, the only investments we made in the beginning were sweat equity. We didn't figure out that we had to start asking our members to put in money. It took us 5 years to figure that out. So the barrier to entry of starting a store in Brooklyn, New York then was very low. We didn't need a lot of money to do it. So we were very fortunate in that. And within 2 years, after 2 or 3 failures of different work systems, we developed a system where members were required to work together in teams every 4 weeks. At first, it was maybe 3.5 hours, and then eventually it became 3 hours, and then 2.5 hours to 2 3/4 hours. Every 4 weeks, you work with a group of people, and there was nobody who was paid, and you'd say to them, see you next week. And what you really meant was see you in 4 weeks, see you in 28 days, exactly. And so you might be helping receive deliveries on a Thursday afternoon, or you might be helping to run the checkout area on a Saturday. There were many different jobs. You might be on the committee that ordered food that met every Sunday night, and your turn would be every 4 weeks. And so we developed this idea of working together, and it turned out to be an extremely powerful thing, and we needed to keep refining it to make sure that it worked. We needed to keep making it better and better and better and making it more sensible. And we basically kept refining it all those years. Once we got it together in late '74 to do this every 4-week rotation, we just kept innovating up until the pandemic. We were innovating and making it stronger. What I have found over the years is that people really like working together, and that it's part of our human condition, that when people come together and work together, it means something more to them. I was very struck by what Lisa said, Lisa Herzog said about experiencing sociability and experiencing meaning, because it's not lost on our members that the meaning of their work is sustaining this cooperative in a sea of mega corporations. Our cooperative, and and we, by the way, we benefit greatly by being members of National Cooperative Grocers, which is a way of us being able to compete with bigger organizations. But and we're very happy members of National Cooperative Grocers. But on the local level here, where we're probably the only co-op in the United States that's a member of National Cooperative Grocers that uses our system, I think our members really experience meaning, the meaning of, well, what it means to sustain a cooperative in a sea of mega corporations, and basically it's a community building experience. And so I was struck by that. I just want to go over my notes here, and sometimes I think about our co-op as sometimes I think about the international principles of cooperation, and I think, well, we think there's an eighth principle here at the Park Slope Food Co-op, and we think the eighth principle is you should build connection among your members through members working together whenever that's feasible and whenever that's possible, and that makes us stronger. And I feel like our co-op is amazingly strong because of the love that members have for it, because of the connection they have for it. And so whenever we cooperators can build connection, I feel like that's something we all need to bring to bring to what we do in every aspect. And the most obvious aspect for us is this idea of people working together. People like working together and like creating, our members are creating the wealth together of this cooperative. The wealth is specifically for us, that the biggest expense of running a grocery store is, and we're reducing our paid labor by having members do this work. And so therefore we could reduce prices. So we have this slogan, it's called Good Food at Low Prices for Working Members Through Cooperation since 1973. Eventually we decided to have a mission statement somewhere in the mid 1990s, but I was very happy with that slogan as the mission statement instead. I didn't think we needed a mission statement, but I don't get to decide everything. I want to say that one thing I learned from the pandemic is when the pandemic started in New York, and as you probably know, New York was very heavily hit with people getting sick and some people dying, and there was a lot of fear. And we were told by public health, by members who were involved in public health primarily, who got in touch with the management here and said, you know, we think the co-op is a perfect petri dish for bringing groups of people together to work together and spread the virus together and kill each other and others. So you got to get rid of the member labor system. And so top management, of which I am part, we decided to temporarily end our member labor system we basically in 2 days. And we started hiring temporary staff. And I have to tell you that the doing a checkout for 30 hours a week or stocking shelves for 35 hours a week, I am so glad that none of our permanent staff ever had to do this. And now we have temporary staff doing it, and some permanent staff are also doing that. And it's when you go to a grocery store as a child with your parent, you don't think you might like want to go home and play store, when you're a little kid. Well, our members get to come here and play store, and they could be a professor, or they could be a taxi driver, or they could be a school teacher or a police officer. But when they come here, they get to play store and they like it. But one of the reasons they might like it is because they only do it every fourth week for 2.5, 2 3/4 hours. And now I see that we have some of our temporary workers, I would say, don't really like it, and don't bring the same positive attitude to say the checkout lane experience as our members did. And some members have said to me, hey, I think there's something going on here. The co-op is not what it used to be. There's something about spreading what some people would call menial work, but spreading it around in the community to a larger community that doesn't consider it menial work. So we'll have members who are very successful in their life, have plenty of money, but are very happy to come and work together with people that they have no idea what the other people are doing in their lives, and to meet each other and to talk and to work together. So we've had certain great benefits of members dedicating themselves to the co-op. For example, we had a member who volunteered to computerize our membership list. This was about 1978. So we benefited from digitization of our membership list back then. And we took in the mid 90s, we took a really excellent manual inventory system where we did a physical inventory every week, every Sunday night at the end of the week. We took a physical inventory so we could have fantastic statistics on our sales and know exactly what to order for the next week. And we benefited from that, and stores can only dream of that with even their point of sale systems weren't necessarily up to that level at that time. And so we took that manual system that we already had and made it digital. And so now we don't take a physical inventory every week. We just take a partial one. But I just think that, we just have benefited from the digitization, and we look forward to actually needing fewer paid staff as we get better and better at using computers to keep track of the food, to kind of do just-in-time inventory even better than we already do it, which we're already very good at it. Luckily, the pandemic is winding down. We're going to bring back a new temporary member labor system in July that won't have people coming together in big groups, but rather in small groups to continue to practice social distancing. And then hopefully a few months after that, we'll go back to our old system. And so let's say, I just want to explain a little bit more how it works. So let's say on a typical Saturday morning, say at 8 o'clock in the morning, a group would come in and they would run the checkout area, and there would be 2 or 3 leaders. There would be 18 checkouts, and because we're a very, very busy store, even though we're very, very small, a very small footprint, we do a lot of business in a very small space. And so we need 18 checkouts, and that leader would also run the childcare room where you could drop off your kid while you're in the building, either working or shopping upstairs. And there'll also be a group of people, since we have no parking lot, who would be outside walking you to your home or your car or the subway stop nearby. And so we'd have that group, and we'd have leadership in that group, and the leadership would welcome new people to the group. So that's a typical thing. And then at 10:30, another group would come in to replace them, and there would be a 15-minute overlap. So that's kind of how we did it. There'd also be a receiving and stocking group that would receive any deliveries during that time and stock the shelves. And staff would be, we'd have staff that would support the front end group, what we call the shopping squad, in case a computer went down. And we had staff that would support the stocking effort. Because as a member coming in once every 4 weeks, you can't possibly know where everything is in the building and how to get it quickly. So anyway, so basically the jobs that we have, the permanent jobs that we have, are well paid with good benefits. And for a lot of those staff, they find real meaning in it. and they find real friendships among the group of staff. And so I think the future of work, I don't know, from my point of view, it's a bright future because people like working together, and we've been able to ride that concept, you know, to actually great success, you know, and we're trying to come out the other side of the pandemic, and luckily our government has helped us with 2 very big PPP loans that we've gotten from the federal government, and probably some other credits that we're going to get. So we think we're going to come out the other side of this okay. Anyway, I'm sure there are other things. I wasn't very organized. I'm sorry about that. There's a lot more I could say about our cooperative and about the lessons that I've learned about work through it. But the big one is people like working together. They like making a connection. They like producing and protecting and sustaining a co-op together. And they're quite thrilled about it. And they're really happy to not be part of mainstream corporate America. And so that's all for now. I know that I'm looking at the time. I see that I better stop talking, right? Because it's about 11:30 here in Brooklyn, New York. Okay.
Thank you very much, Joe. I have, I think, a million questions to all 3 of you. Thank you very much. You're really all brilliant. But I see there's a lot of questions that already are in the chat. So I have a first question. Can we better exploit the opportunities of the platform economy with comprehensive supplier, consumer, and worker cooperatives? I can see actually each of you answering this question from different perspectives. So I'll let you all tackle this aspect because I think you have different perspectives on it. I don't know who wants to start. Joe, you mentioned a bit about how have you been working? You were talking about how automation helped you out, but are you working also with other platforms? And have you any links with the cooperative platform movement in the US?
Well, we get great benefits from being a member of National Cooperative Grocers and access to talking to other people, like for instance, the colleagues of mine that are involved in human resources very often look at, they gain knowledge from the human resources folks in other members of our National Cooperative Grocers, which has about 150 members. It might be more now, maybe 100, a little more than that. Is that what you mean?
I don't know, because there's this platform movement, and sometimes you have like different organizations of even how food is delivered in the last mile, or you have different organizations. And I don't know if you had any link.
I mean, we're still very old-fashioned. Big trucks, small trucks come here, and we unload them as ergonomically safely as possible. And we get better and better equipment every year. We figure out better ways to do that, but not so much platform.
Antonio, maybe you want to step on this question as well?
Sure. Of course, there are some examples that come to mind immediately, because both Sarah and I have been working on those all over Europe, especially. There's a lot of debate about the delivery or logistic platforms and the cooperative approach to those. Of course, some of the examples that come to mind are the Italian cooperative Consegna Etiche, which means ethical delivery, and or for instance the Spanish example of Mensacas, which is something like of course the cooperative and common-based approach to delivery. These are examples that, in my opinion, are extremely important. But the question that Inigo was asking was about comprehensive suppliers, consumers, and worker cooperatives. And in my opinion, one of the topics that we did not address so far is in this discussion today is the role of consumers, especially when it comes to digital services. This is not a simple topic. How can we involve the consumers of digital platforms? Think any digital platforms. I'm not only, addressing the Uber-like or the Airbnb-like platforms. There are, social platforms. There are information platforms. Wikipedia can be construed as a platform. Facebook, Google are platforms. And in this case, if one wanted to involve consumers, which in this case, of course, are users, but also producers of content and data, we should probably adopt new rules, new approaches, even points of view. One example that comes to mind is the unfortunately unsuccessful attempt by Nathan Schneider to buy Twitter and to turn it into a user-based cooperative. Of course, this was a provocation, not a bit of provocation, a big provocation. Of course, it was doomed to fail, but it was interesting because this points this points out the role that users can have into raising awareness and developing an actual conscience of being responsible and respectful and of course humane users of these platforms. There are a number of examples. There are a number of examples that for instance, take the form of Facebook user unions or Google reCAPTCHA class actions. These are many of the things that we've been witnessing, and in some cases also helping out in the last few years. And these are all very important. And probably the main point is we should probably not only think about cooperatives as conventional 20th century or even 19th century cooperatives that turned into something new with technologies, but probably try and involve even more people and even consumers to a new level in this new ecosystem.
Thank you, Antonio. I don't know, Lisa, if you want to add on this.
Yeah, just maybe one point where I don't have really answers, but just sort of the consumer side of these things is very much that with lots of these online issues is convenience. You just go to the biggest platform that there is, and then it's Airbnb and it's Zoom and it's almost the capitalist ones. And I mean, if you start looking for almost any online service on a platform, there is some smaller platform with better ethical principles, and maybe there's even a cooperative. But I think there is a huge issue about awareness and about convenience. And if these different online services that have the non-corporatist values could connect better, maybe that could be part of an answer to how you could then reach more consumers, because it becomes easier for them to find these alternatives if one leads to the other, and these are all connected. So I think there's this huge problem of network effects and size. The more the alternative models are connected, the easier it becomes to address that and then to reach more consumers.
Maybe a role for the ICA and the principle of cooperation among cooperatives, and not only. I see here there's another question. I think it's from Coteta. The technological opportunities currently are also destroying the employees' rights due to the distance and time factors and functionalities. There is a need of trade unions advocacy for the new kind of technological jobs. Now it is the time to focus on social capital rather than economic capital. The COVID-19 has changed the entire aspect with regard to enterprise all over the world. Any of you want to react on this?
I probably all agree that this is very important. What I see in the European context, I don't know whether this is a general thing, is that some unions seem to be rather skeptical of anything technical because they suspect that it will be used to squeeze workers more. And of course, to some extent, this is true. But if unions don't themselves also embrace some of the positive potentials, I think that will put them into a very difficult spot, and they will also lose credibility with younger generations where they already have a difficult stance. So I think it's crucial that unions find the right position there, not rejecting technological change as such, but emphasizing what it takes to protect workers' rights under these new conditions, and maybe also adopting some of the positive potentials for their own internal running, and for maybe also becoming a bit more open and less hierarchical among themselves. I mean, that's not true for all of them, but some of them are, or are perceived as still pretty hierarchical. And so there is, I think, also an opportunity for the internal structures of unions here.
Antonio, I know that you have some things to
share.
Yeah,
I probably I had a bit of a problem when you were actually reading the question. I understand from Liz's reply that it is about the role of unions. So I can probably, I don't know, develop on that. In my own experience over the last 5 years, I've been working with several unions. There are, of course, yes, of course, two types of unions. Some that are extremely trying to get ready, at least, or trying to keep up, and in some cases even being extremely innovative themselves. The example that I have in mind, for instance, is IG Metall in Germany, that back in 2016 started developing their own approach to fair crowd work, for instance, or platform work, or for instance, the Italian CGIL, which developed their own, we might call it like legal doctrine of contracting the algorithm, and have been successful in challenging the algorithms or the algorithmic management of workers on platforms such as Deliveroo, for instance. Then on the other side, of course, yeah, there is this fear of losing members, but this is more related to the approach. Well, one might say that in a way this is related to their own conception of the workplace. How do you define the workplace, the place where you work? If this workplace is conceived in a conventional, traditional way, like a factory or an office or any other traditional industrial revolution setting, yes, of course, yeah, platforms are, wouldn't say ubiquitous, but you know, workers can be in the street, or can be, I don't know, in India or in Germany, or in the Philippines. It probably doesn't matter to an extent. So yes, in some cases, unions are uncomfortable because they still haven't developed their own approach to this new place, this new workplace that is, well, global in nature. And again, not all unions. IG Metall and several Scandinavian unions, again, back in 2017, I think, published a set of rules for the platform economy called the Frankfurt Papers. And they were addressing, or at least asking, the right questions, like, I don't know, what is the minimum wage if your platform is scattered from North America to I don't know, Madagascar? And what is the court that is responsible when you have a litigation between, I don't know, workers and the companies and clients and subcontractors and so on? What is the status that one has to adopt? And this is something that, of course, is discussed, and there are several court decisions and laws recently that have reclassified, sorry, platform workers as workers in some cases, and as salaried workers in other cases. I think that the scenario is, or at least the picture is not that doom and gloom. There are some interesting things developing.
I would like to go back to Joe. I have a question regarding also the unions, because I remember in Belgium we had this event where there was many cooperatives, of which also your equivalent in Belgium called Biscoop, and there were unions there also. We were talking about different aspects of work, and I remember that there was this one unionist who was quite afraid, saying, "Yeah, but if this model goes, expands, how do you, if you're not an employment relationship, how do you organize things in terms of safety and security? How is the work valued?" And so I was wondering, in the US, how did you address these questions of the safety security, of course, but maybe also valorization of work, how work is valued within the co-op, beyond the fact that you access the supermarket to a local price?
Yeah, well, like I said, we do 58. Well, we were pre-pandemic $58 million a year and of business, and had 17,000 members who could shop here, and the 75 employees had very well-paid jobs, way above the average for grocery store workers in the United States. So those jobs, so we created fewer jobs, but a store our size would have had maybe a couple of hundred, maybe even 300 additional jobs if we didn't have the structure that we have of members coming in. There's always been some people who say, well, you're taking jobs away from people who need jobs because you have your members working for free as a requirement of their membership. And that's always been an issue. And so I could tell you that theoretically there would be more grocery store jobs in Brooklyn if we didn't exist, for sure. There would have to be. But I don't think that's a great argument. We've created good jobs and created a community of, so I think the value is in building a community and people feeling connected to a cooperative. What I would probably unfairly answer that with a different question, like, can the unions join together with cooperatives to figure out why cooperatives are always undercapitalized compared to entities that can go to the stock market and sell shares and things like that, and that's a problem. Most capitalist businesses, if they were as successful as we were, would have been figuring out, well, how could we have 2 stores, 3 stores, 4 stores, 5 stores? And to some extent, our cooperative, because it's a democracy, and that's one of the principles of cooperation, our cooperative is sort of, we don't expand. And if we do expand, it'll be, and we've been talking about it for years now, should we open up a second store? That's not a very, a capitalist would say, look at you folks, you're doing great. What are you doing to create more good jobs like that? From let's say the worker side, or from the ownership side, the capitalist side, but the fact is that we plow our savings back into our members' pockets every time they shop. So there is no capitalist side, except that we exist in a capitalist society. So I don't know, that's not really an answer, is it? But anyway, I tried.
Yes, it is. But you comply with safety and security as if they were employees, I suppose. No need to have that status. That was just the other part of the question you didn't answer, but I suppose. Lisa, there were some questions specifically for you. Could you please explain a bit more about democratizingwork.org and what it does and what it aims to achieve? Yep.
Yeah, thank you. it's still quite loose, to be honest. We don't even have any kind of legal form. It's basically a group of mostly academics, mostly women, who realize that we're all working on these topics from different angles, sociologists, philosophers, economists. And what brings us together is a sense that these topics deserve more attention, and also that there's really in the academic world a kind of hegemony of denying that democratic work is possible in a way, and always just having economic theories that focus on efficiency as if this was an independent moral value. And what we are trying to do is think about how can we challenge this, how can we bring together different actors, and how can we create transdisciplinary knowledge about these things. And transdisciplinary means that we don't want to only connect different academic disciplines, but also learn from people who have the practical experience. So unions, cooperatives, sometimes also other forms of progressive business or politicians who fight for these things. So what we're trying to do is create a kind of platform where these people can encounter each other and learn from each other, basically. And that's what this Global Forum in October wants to do. There is a book that we've written. That's always the first thing academics do, write a book about something. But the aim is really to create awareness. And what the forum wants to do is, on the one hand, show the global importance of these topics. But what we realized very quickly is that the practical challenges are so different in different countries. And for example, when we started, it was mostly people from Europe and the US, and then we quickly got some people from Brazil and India, for example, on board. And they told us, look, if 70% of work is informal, then your talk about different corporate forms isn't quite what we need. We need to start in a very different place. And so we're also trying to offer people in different countries interested in these issues the opportunity to come together at this occasion and to discuss the issues in different countries. So this forum will have a few plenary sessions with speakers that are hopefully interesting for everyone. But then we want to have national chapters organizing their own events. And as I said, everyone is really invited to participate. You can also email me if you want to know more. There's some information on the website. And to use this as an opportunity to bring different actors together and to raise awareness. Maybe that's the most important bits for now.
Thank you. I don't know, I think that Inigo from the working group on the future work wanted to ask a question. I saw that you wrote and you're there, so maybe you want to ask it in person. You're still muted.
Sorry, you mean me having an answer or making a question?
Yes, I saw that you wrote a question or two, and I don't know if you wanted to just say it out loud or.
No, I was just trying to share some experiences about involving also consumers and put the cooperative form as a very flexible way of putting together different parts of our community. I put it there, the example of energy communities that we are creating in the last months, trying to launch a new initiatives to create communities about the creating energy and consuming energy and distributing energy. And it goes a bit with this idea of Joe Hall's, a bit sharing things and sharing things together and feeling the meaning of trying to solve social challenge together. I think this is a very strong point that many other ways of organizing the let's say the social collaboration do not have, and that maybe linking with what Lisa said, maybe the society is not very aware of the many opportunities that a cooperative way of working can have, and the realities we already have. That's the only point I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Migo. We are close to the end of our session. I don't know if anybody wants to add a question. Do not hesitate to speak up. Otherwise, for me, it was very interesting. I think we have a lot of elements to complement our preliminary baseline reports. Highlight a few dead angles that we should work on, and I'm really thinking also with this conversation that really we've had all this discussion about the added value of cooperatives, and indeed maybe we should really use the International Cooperative Alliance to really promote these initiatives and make them more visible, even more than. Also there was the issue of financing, which was quite important to support the development of technologies that are more the cooperative values. And there was also one thing that appeared in different ways from the three speakers, which I thought was uncanny. It was the routine, the question we were thinking of the future of work. And if we're thinking of, many of you mentioned the question of routine, and Lisa, for example, was mentioning that automation could help to stop the routine. And I think that Antonio would say, well, that actually at the time being, artificial intelligence is increasing routine because it's humans that are doing these little click work on the back. So it's actually increasing it. And from what I hear from Joe, what I see is that routine work, if it's not a full-time occupation, if it has a purpose, if it allows you to have a sense of community and cooperating with your neighbors, your communities, or other members of the cooperative, it can actually be very positive experience. So it really, for me, that it was this routine thing, kind of with these different aspects, was something that I thought was peculiar. And what I come out with this from this conversation, I really thank the three of you, Antonio, Lisa, and Joe, for your input. It was really interesting to have these different experiences and for you to take the time to answer to all the questions we've had. I think this is really going to help us because there was many aspects, and we can stress a little bit more about the democracy at work, the meaning of work, which I think that is quite absent in many debates at institutional levels, but also really the role not only of cooperatives per se, but of cooperatives working together to raising awareness as to consumers and producers and in other ways of producing, and promoting those in line with the decent work agenda. I think that can be, these are things that are in my mind. I'm still thinking about them, so I'm not very clear in this wrap up. I'm really sorry. But we'll be writing it on paper once we have cleared our mind a little bit more. But I took a lot of notes. We have a lot of input. And I especially want to finish by thank you really the three speakers, and especially I would really, really like to thank the International Cooperative Alliance staff for helping me out in the organization of this webinar, sorry, and HUNSIG particularly also for helping in this preliminary report. I also want to thank all of the members of the working group for your effort and your input, and we still have a lot of work to do. I hope you put some notes, I took some notes as well so we can complement our report. And I would say that for those who are interested, we can disseminate it once we will complement with the information we've gathered thanks to this, for me at least, a very interesting debate. And I thank you everybody from all over the world who's been following us. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to send them to the Secretariat. They'll help us. And I was going to forget the group picture. So we have 1 minute before we're late. We want you to get your best smile out so that we can have a nice group picture for this conference. Later, I'll let you know when we're doing the picture when it's done.
Okay, so smile everyone. I'm taking a couple of pictures of all of you.
Managed to get us all on screen, yay.
Yeah, all around the world. That's amazing. Many thanks. Done, Sarah.
Thank you, everybody. And
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everybody. God bless.
Thank you.